Well, Tom, thank you for agreeing to talk with me. And of course, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, uh, what finally worked? What got you over the hump? How did this happen? How did you do it?
Sure. Yeah, well, I've been here as Cancer Center Director 8 years now. And the goal for my recruitment was for us to become a comprehensive cancer center. That was pretty clear. We have had great institutional commitment for that objective. UVA has been designated as a cancer center by NCI since like 1986. And interestingly enough, it was designated originally as a basic science center, even though we saw patients here. And I think that's kind of the epitome of the problem, actually, because that probably should not have occurred. And one of the main reasons I came here was that it's been exceptionally great science here, but relatively weak on the clinical end, and had really no funding or no organized programs at all in population research. So when I arrived, we had a strategic plan, basically calling for reformatting our programs, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But the bottom line is we had to create a vigorous population research program that would withstand the scientific peer review process. And that was the biggest challenge we had, because this is the very first time we ever applied for comprehensive status. So that program did not exist at all. And it would be the first time the program was being reviewed, in addition to the center being reviewed for comprehensive status. Unfortunately, we had a lot of great recruitment, and the program was judged to be of excellent scientific caliber.
Oh, fantastic. So this took you 8 years to build.
Yeah, as soon as I arrived, we started doing that. The key first thing we needed to do was, shortly after I arrived, a renewal was coming up, and there was a big transition of our leadership here. Pretty much almost everyone knew, except for Dina Halmi, who's been the Associate Center Director for Research Administration. But Mike Weber was my predecessor. Tom and Sally Parsons were program leaders. They were all retiring, and they built the Cancer Center personally on the foundation of all the discoveries they made in cancer cell signaling, and including characterization and elucidation of MAP kinase pathways. Like, one of the numerous fantastic basic science accomplishments here. So the key for the first time I arrived was basically just getting the grant renewed with the transition and leadership. Now, we did actually create or had a renewal of a women's cancer program. And we were deliberately already recruiting people into that program that were cancer epi people focused on women's cancers that we knew would transition into a population research program, 5 years after that. So that was part of the strategy, that we're already recruiting people into an established program with the goal of transitioning into a cancer control population research program ultimately.
Yeah, I didn't realize this was a basic science research center. I had no idea.
I don't know if you should publish that, because when we met with Hank Cialino to get permission to apply for a comprehensive center, he said, "What? You were founded as a basic science center?" That's because we had a clinical operation here. So that was 86, I think.
So 86 through when were you a basic science center?
Well, now it transitioned to a regular regular designated center. It's just that originally somehow it got designated as a basic science center. So I can look more into that if
No, I'm just curious. That's all.
Yeah, it was very bizarre.
Yeah.
I think it epitomizes the whole story here. It's like clinical research was not a big part of the cancer center until we arrived. To talk a little bit more about that, just give you I kind of, for the four important criteria for comprehensive cancer center, usually the hardest one is number one, which is depth and breadth of research, clinical, basic, and population research. I always characterize that internally to the crowd here of, okay, basic science would have been great. Clinical research, relatively weak. population research, non-existent. That was the challenge. So in the clinical research, that and the population research, I say, were equivalent goals of, focused recruitment and intensive investment. So basically, when I arrived, hem-onc division. So this was kind of encouraging. The clinical trial accrual was lower than expected, but there were pockets of excellence. And hem-onc, usually the heart and soul of that enterprise, was not really recruiting hardly anyone to clinical trials. And the basic problem here was that, like a lot of places, the hem-onc division was not really supported well by the health system. And so we only had like 12 to 14 hem-onc faculty when I arrived. 8 years from now, we have like 35 plus just clinical faculty. So that allowed us really to build a clinical engine. The health system is really behind us. They can continue to contribute a lot to build up the cancer program because we're very profitable for the whole entire health system. So that was the single biggest bolus of recruitment that allowed us to not only build the cancer business, we have a cancer service line that's umbrellaed under the cancer center through the health system, but obviously deliver excellent multidisciplinary care, but also double the number of patients on clinical trials over 5 years. The strategy there was we had a few senior recruits. So Rob Dreiser has been integral for this whole process as the deputy director of the cancer center, associate center director for clinical research. We recruited him from the Cleveland Clinic, where he was the head of the Department of Medical Oncology. And he's done a fabulous job of reorganizing the whole clinical trials office. So, it was all distributed, all different areas, surgery, gynoc, whatever. Made a huge investment and organizational structure that the CTO is now under the umbrella of the cancer center. So a huge number of probably 90 plus staff just merged into the cancer center under our umbrella. And it was certainly can improve clinical trials, but it was a really significant investment, but also great progress really under Dr. Dreiser and his team.
How much did do you have the numbers of what it cost roughly to go from company?
I can get you the numbers, but could we presented that probably several hundreds of millions of dollars, I would say. We presented that as institutional commitment. I can get the actual numbers from our CCSG slide presentation.
Oh, that's fascinating because it's an interesting number that keeps shifting, of course, as costs.
Yeah, it's always hard because we're a matrix center, so it's always hard to get the particular details. But if you add up like all the faculty recruited, within the cancer center, it's like 80 to 100 people in 8 years. So that's a huge investment from the institution.
Oh, that's amazing. And what about the catchment area? Can we talk about that for a moment?
Sure, yeah. So our catchment area is geographically large. I think it's about 83 to 90 counties. I can get the actual number, but it spans probably half of Virginia and then also into West Virginia. And it's really characterized by rural underserved populations. It's really Appalachia. So particularly Southwest Virginia and West Virginia, the major problems there are the risk factors are really much higher there compared to the rest of the United States, obesity and tobacco. So there's still like more than 30% of people that smoke in Appalachia, so Southwest Virginia, West Virginia. Therefore, lung cancer much higher than anywhere. It's very similar to like Kentucky Cancer Center's emphasis. Lung cancer and colorectal cancer, probably because of obesity, is such a big risk factor. So that's the catchment area. It's about 3.2 million people. 1/3 of them, was strictly defined by NCI or rural. So it's more than 1 million rural people. We have, if you analyze the catchment area by counties, there's obviously differences in disparities throughout the catchment area. But if you look at the overall catchment area, it's very rural, underserved, poor, really difficult access to health systems. We've had a long-standing, one thing that really benefited us is that we've had a long-standing extension program, community outreach before the COE was actually formalized, with community-led participation in Southwest Virginia for more than 10 years. So that was really very strong in terms of, by cross collaboration between the community and the cancer center.
Is there anything else that's remarkable and noteworthy about your outreach and engagement? Because that would be, I would think there'd be a lot of vehicles involved.
Yeah, so one thing that we did, building on the Southwest experience, recruited Jamie Zollner as a key recruit within the cancer control program. And also had a really very well received in our review is that we have like an e-health platform that is led by Lee Ritterband. And we put significant resources behind that to make that also, it was in psychiatry, it's still in psychiatry. We wanted to make sure that he's very internationally known for this. So we have a number of like apps that we developed for interventions and in the community. So one thing I want to highlight, Jamie Zollner's collaborated very well with Lee. So she has a participatory program, and she's based in Roanoke area, so she still lives there. But we hired her team, hired her entire team to basically be part of UVA Cancer Center. So her research is based on diet, obesity, sugary drinks, and she has a Sip Smarter program, very well funded by grants, where she goes into the middle schools in central to Southwest Virginia, where she educates the high school, the middle school students and high school students, the teachers and their parents to the dangers of sugary drinks. And then she teamed that up with an app. So it's called Sip Smarter. They received like 1 percentile. And that got funded. And we really went from like 0 to a few hundred people participating in interventional population research studies to more than 1,000 a year. And it's kind of all from her work.
Wow.
She was a key part of that.
Oh, fascinating. Last time we talked on record, which was a couple of 3 years ago, we were talking about the NOVA and about kind of our relationships cross-state or with other institutions. What's the status of it now? And let's just not focus only on the NOVA, but also maybe Virginia Tech, and is there anything going on with VCU?
So so we have a number of interactions. UVA Health System is led by a new executive vice president. His name is Craig Kent. He's been here about 1.5 years. Came from Ohio State University. His vision, and the Cancer Center is a really high priority to accomplish this, is to spread out the UVA Health brand across the Commonwealth, because the big criticism of UVA becoming a comprehensive cancer center, even from major donors here and our board of visitors, has been like, you are in Charlottesville. This is a really small community. How are you ever gonna, build a big place where you have a lot of clinical trial accrual if you're in such a small town? So the strategy has been really great from the EVP. So the health, so actually, a few comments on this. So before I arrived, actually, the health system purchased the private oncology group that practiced not only in Charlottesville, but also like in a radius of 30 miles. over time, those community sites became part of UVA, with UVA faculty. They're full members of our cancer center. They're also part of our division of hem-onc faculty. So that was the first initial thing we did. That's been expanded by the health system, initially acquiring like 49% interest in different health systems. But if you march up geographically up Route 29, north from Charlottesville north, 90 miles, there's an intersection 29 and 66. That's 30 miles to DC. So the health system recently purchased a major health system there. So they're now part of UVA. It's called Haymarket and Culpeper. So those are the geographic sites. So they're now UVA umbrella. Inova is 30 miles east of that. We're still collaborating, but it didn't turn out as well as the initial vision a few years ago with Skip Trump, mainly because both health systems had senior leadership changes as their CEOs. So Rick Shannon, who was the driver here of that vision, left. Craig Kent came in. Same thing happened at Inova. And the integration of the cancer centers was not a priority anymore. The initial vision was actually to create a building up there that would be a genomics center. The initial vision was funded by the state, $100 million plus. Inova, UVA, the state, was to create a genomics center physically based with a building like 8 stories, mainly lab space for genomics. And this built up under Dr. Nina Huber was there also. John had a genomics center there, mainly focused on pediatrics. But that fell through when Inova became more focused on the clinical engine. And there's still definitely thoughts of collaborating there, but the building and the genomics center is out. But we're still collaborating with John Deacon, who is Skip's successor there, particularly areas of population health. We're thinking of co-recruiting faculty, but the bigger vision with Skip is no longer working.
What about?
Actually, let me mention one other thing. UVA does have a CTSA, so that does include Inova and Virginia Tech that you mentioned. So those are the key 3 institutions there. So we're still collaborating extensively, but not as much in the cancer arena as we had thought.
So your approach is buying up health systems, smaller health systems, and incorporating them. That's the classic sort of land.
So basically, the hospital here, just give you an idea, 500 to 600 beds. With the new purchases of this other health system, probably 1,100 beds we have.
Oh wow! And how many patients do you have now? New cancer, the ones that are registered.
Well, we see around. We have about in the cancer center. We have 80,000 to 100,000 visits a year. Those aren't obviously all new patients, but we are hoping to expand even more with the newer sites up north.
Oh, fascinating. Is there anything we forgot? Anything you'd like to add?
I think I should just spend a little bit of time telling you about how we reorganized the scientific program. Okay, so that was a major initiative of ours too. So the previous renewal that I accomplished when I arrived had 5 scientific programs. And based on our expert advice from our external advisory board, but also reflecting the advice of that review, we realized, so for example, we did not have a therapeutics program. And that was a key. So in addition to not having a population research program, like I mentioned, optimizing the clinical research program was really important. And that was highlighted by the fact that one of the comments of the site visit last time was that even if you optimize your current structure they didn't think it was going to be very successful in what we wanted to accomplish. So we rethought everything, and we basically created 4 programs, only one of which was basically the same, which is a cancer genomics epigenetics program. It's the entire Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Genetics here at the med school. That stayed the same. Obviously, there's some evolution of the program, but essentially the same. So we had the founding program I mentioned is a cancer signaling program, which is what the Webbers and the Parsons built. Spinning out of that program many years ago was a really scientifically excellent to outstanding program in chemical and structural biology. We thought it was better to put them back together just to generate synergy between those two. So it's called a cancer biology program. So that was a synthesis of 2 organized programs that wasn't particularly challenging. So more challenging was the brand new development of population research program that I mentioned. And then also we established a cancer therapeutics program. The predecessor of that was fairly well-known cancer immunology and immunotherapy program, strong basic science before, immunotherapy proved its worth in the clinic, based on a pioneer in mass spec, Don Hunt, in this college in chemistry. One of the first groups to identify cancer-specific antigens were HLA-linked peptides in melanoma. So that led to an international program in cancer vaccination from melanoma, led by Craig Slinghoff on the clinical side. So the other component of that was the women's oncology program that I mentioned. Put them all together into a cancer therapeutics program led by Craig Slinghoff. So they also have done a really good job. Another significant accomplishment. So that's any questions on the programs? That's how we reorganized them.
Fascinating. Yeah.
The other major effort that we made over the past 5 years is, under the 6 essential characteristics, there's the transdisciplinary coordination and collaboration section. So we got very good, which equals very bad in the NCI part, descriptive terminology there. And, the key question there was, okay, you guys have great science for many years. What's the clinical impact, translational impact? What UVA science has gone into the clinic? So we spent a big investment on that. Cross grounds, that's a Jeffersonian term for campus here. So the cross grounds efforts have led to an umbrella organization called the NanoStar Institute. So we have nanotherapeutics and clinical trials now at UVA. We have a really good collaboration with our biomedical engineering program. It's kind of a hybrid, reports to the School of Medicine and to the School of Engineering. So a really great systems biology focus there. And physicists, basic science, physical oncology. We had some good effort there to lead to some grants. So we also developed a formal pipeline for therapeutics. A number of, the site visit was impressed by the number of spin-off companies that we formed. And we went from a relatively small number of really major, program project grants. We only had like 2 to like 10 within a few years. So the bottom line was from very good, we went to outstanding in that section. So that was really integral to that second, the 4 categories for comprehensive. We talked about the research programs being excellent. We made a lot of effort there. Second one is transdisciplinary research. We went from very good to outstanding based on a lot of investment and focused effort. And then the third one, COE, we already talked about. Education and training, that did the best of any individual component. So we did really well, actually.
Yeah. Well, did all of this exist inside your skull? Was that the vision that you had on day one, or how much of it was like you walk in and kind of take a Bayesian approach?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was attracted here for a number of reasons. One was the UVA cancer center being very prestigious science perspective. Secondly, really significant institutional commitment that I recognize. So my individual package was like 50 million plus to build everything, but it turned out to be so much bigger than that initial offer letter, And then we love being part of the University of Virginia, and we love living here. So all those things made it very attractive for me to come here. In terms of strategic plan, it's really interesting because everyone wants to have, and this for sure, have a really very comprehensive strategic plan. I had like a one-page strategic plan, and we had like 7 bullet points on it, and we just built from that. I mean, the principle was a lot of great people here, build on the strengths you have, but complement that by fantastic recruitment from outside. And that's kind of what we did. We didn't have like a 35, 40-page document strategic plan. We just had 1 page of major bullet points.
Oh my God. So that must have taken you half a day to write.
And they're like, build up population research, build up clinical research, nanotechnology, immunotherapy, education, training, those things, those kind of bullet points.
Yeah, but this kind of gets to the question of how Joe Simone used to describe it. You've seen one cancer center, you've seen one cancer center. This case, but in this case, it's probably becoming a little more homogenized in a way because everybody needs these same things. It's just I don't know. I'm asking. I'm not commenting.
Well, it is. Definitely, NCI has perspectives on what a cancer center can be, as evidenced by they're constantly revising their guidelines, adding new sections. The COE, Henry Cialino is on record of saying the director of the COE is the second most important person in the cancer center. That gives you the NCI perspective on how important that is. And now the newest section that's coming up is diversity. So that'll be another, adjustment that everyone needs to formalize. I mean, everybody's been doing this, but we have to probably have, everyone is probably moving towards having an associate center director of diversity for the cancer centers. So yeah, definitely, there's some definitely common threads that are mandated by the NCI and their guidelines. Obviously, though, there's still the perspective that everyone is a little bit different based on where you're living and the resources that you have. Obviously, UVA Cancer Center is not Sloan Kettering or MD Anderson in terms of just philanthropy that comes into the place. So that's very well recognized by the NCI that there are standards of excellence that everyone can achieve, whether you're a smaller center or you're a huge place.
Yeah, no, that seems to be very interesting. Anything else we've forgotten?
No, I think that's a probably good overview.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.